ago, the great Greek poet Homer wrote the book known as the Odyssey, depicting the harrowing tale of Odysseus as he was trying to return back home to his wife and son. And along his journey, he had some insane encounters. Along one of these encounters was his venture into the cave of the Cyclops named Polydemus. And I want to talk about this in the context of comparative religion and how it's actually the same story as is told in many other religions. And in fact, in a manner of speaking, is the exact same story as David slaying Goliath and erecting the first temple of Judaism. Now let me get into this. First and foremost, I'd like to say that I'm a shaman, and a shaman is someone who understands the use of pharmacopic plants to be essential in the communication with God and the understanding of the death experience, which is the fundamental central factor of all the world's religions. I have experienced this firsthand. I've spoken, or God has spoken to me. I do not claim to speak back. I've been across the river Styx and seen the darkness on the other side and ventured back across to this world to bring the message that there's nothing to fear except for fear itself and ignorance, which is fear. And that Polydemus, the Cyclops living in the cave on that island of Cyclopses that Odysseus landed on in Homer's Odyssey, well, that's humankind. Just like Plato writes an allegory of the cave, this is Homer's allegory of the cave using Odysseus. Except for different. It's telling a story about the foundation of religion, about the history and origins of humankind, and how we can liberate ourselves once again. It's a multi-layered story. When Odysseus and his men arrive on the island, they venture about and they find some goats. And so they follow this herd of goats and they discover that, well, there's a cave. They look inside the cave and the cave's inhabited. So they decide to hang around and see who lives in the cave. Eventually, around that day, Polydemus, a giant Cyclops, returned. And he made them stay in the cave. At first, it appeared like they were going to be fine and dandy. But this giant Cyclops, Polydemus, for whatever reason, when he found them in his cave, got angry and he ate two of them right away. And he caged them in his cave. This one-eyed beast. Well, Odysseus, being the captain of the ship that he was, wanting to get back to the promised land and escape the cave and not see any more of his men killed by this Cyclops, hatched a plan. Now this is where the symbolism and the allegory come in. This is true. Now you should check out a book called The Divine Origin of the Craft, of the Ancient Craft of Herbalism. It's written in 1921 by E.A. Wallace Budge, and in that book he says unequivocally that all the world's religions, the oldest religions, were founded in the use of herbalism and the sciences that were gifted to mankind according to legend by Thoth, or Hermes, who is central to all of this. And I'll get into that later. I'll make a lot of videos. I'm going to dedicate my life to explaining what it means to humanity and what has been lost. But with that being said, Odysseus' plan was to get a 6-foot-long stick and hide it under manure until Polyphemus and Cyclops decided to have his evening meal. And then Odysseus had 40 blivets of really strong wine. They had to dilute 20 to 1. It was so strong on the ship. Who he suggested that they offer to the Cyclops Polyphemus. Well, Polyphemus loved this, and they didn't let him know that it was so strong. And this is according to the official story. Well, Polyphemus drank the strong wine and he passed out. And that's when the men pulled their 6-foot stick out of the manure and pierced his eye. They blinded the Cyclops so that he couldn't see. They still weren't home free though, because Polyphemus was so large and so strong that the rock guarding the entrance to his cave could only be moved by him. So they were still trapped in this cave. It took reason and guile to escape. They eventually knew that Well, Polyphemus figured that they were still in the cave also, and that they had only one exit, so he went and waited by the door. And all of his sheep were roaming about, and he was talking to them. Ah, sheep, how I wish you could talk so you could tell me where that wretched crew is who blinded me. Why did nobody blind me? Nobody is the name of Odysseus, because when Polyphemus asked Odysseus his name, he said, nobody. And as Polyphemus was awakening to the red-hot poker being jammed through his cyclopean eye, he yelled, nobody's blinding me! Or nobody's killing me. I'm sorry. Nobody's trying to kill me. That's what he says. Nobody's trying to kill me. This is all significant. Eventually, wise Odysseus discovers that the sheep are moving in and out of the cave freely. So he decides that this is going to be their way out. He and his men cling to the belly of the sheep and ride them right out past Polyphemus's not so watchful gaze. Eventually they escaped, but Odysseus turned and he boasted to Polyphemus, and this almost cost Odysseus and the crew their lives, because huge Polyphemus began hurling boulders at them, which almost capsized their ship on their escape. And they eventually sailed off, and the Odyssey continues. This story is significant for a number of reasons. I'm going to get into it. These people, these Cyclops, Polyphemus is referred to as the son of Poseidon, or the godlike Polyphemus. In Homer's Iliad, he even speaks of it. And the Odyssey, obviously. So Polyphemus was a Cyclops, and they were a race of Cyclopses. The Cyclops is the human being. It is the demos, the demon. It's the masses, if you will. It's all the people in the world. They only have one eye. And you know what that eye is? It's what everybody else reflects back at them. It's their reflection. So, metaphorically, human beings have two eyes. We have the outward eye that we project, that we talk, and is thus reflected back. So that's one eye. And then we have an inner eye, our soul, our consciousness that connects with ourself, that we talk to ourselves with, that judges our own actions regardless of the outside. Well, the Cyclops, the masses, the large group of people without the ability to listen to an inner eye, it's just a demon. It's a one-eyed demon. That's what it's saying. It's a warning against democracy also. But this one-eyed demon is a slave to his senses. Therefore, he feels safe in his cave with the rock over the door, and his ignorance, because he only has his finite senses, and those are very, very fallible. For instance, the Cyclops only has one eye, so he doesn't have any depth perception. He's not able to chase down any prey or kill any food. He's a shepherd of sheep, apparently, but still, a Cyclops would need other Cyclopses to help him see correctly, or else he would just be a one-eyed man. He'd be basically worthless. And furthermore, his other senses he would become to rely on more, making him more a slave to his lower passions and not listening to his inner eye. So your physical senses, your material senses become more amplified when you're a Cyclops, or the human Cyclops. So it's the materialism, it's the beast spoken of in the book of Revelation. It's just this blind, one-eyed beast. Okay. So Thoth, Hermes, Trismegistus, the thrice greatest magus who gave us the true science, religion, and philosophy of the world, he taught, and he is symbolic of one thing, and that is the Amanita muscaria mushroom. According to Greek mythology, Hermes is referred to as the guide of the dead, the Psychopompus, also the slayer of Argos. And Argos was the god of many eyes who supposedly rivaled Hermes before Zeus sent Hermes to slay him because Zeus was jealous. One of Zeus's girlfriends had been turned into a cow and was being shepherded over by Argos under Hera's order. Zeus wanted his girlfriend back, so he sent Hermes to drug Argos, kill him, and return the cow that was Zeus's girlfriend back to him. That's an allegory for monotheism, the one true wisdom coming from Zeus up on high, Olympus, in our heaven, our brain, okay, because I'm going to drop this on you. You've heard of the cosmic egg? It's right here. This is the cosmic egg. The universe is generated inside our mind. There's nothing outside that is not inside. But we don't have the ability to access it in our normal plane of existence. There's a gate. There's an activation device inside us that's called Christ. He's our portal to Zeus, who is the outward heavens, who's the bigger heaven that we exist inside of, like an onion or a Russian doll. There's even smaller ones inside of us, and and inside of that, and inside of that. If you understand the true meaning of the mysteries and the fractal nature of the universe, you'll understand that we're all just tied to the whipping post, as the Allman Brothers would say. So the Amanita muscaria is a mushroom that has been used by shamans for many thousands of years. And the entire Christmas holiday is predicated off of its worship. From the colors, the red, the green, the white, that's all from the pine tree, and the red and the white's for the color of the Amanita. It's biblical. The tree of life and the fruit of the tree of knowledge, rather, the fruit of the tree of knowledge. The serpent came to tell Eve to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. The serpent is the mushroom, that's the fruit of the tree of knowledge. She took it. Her and Adam thus became aware of good and evil. They gained the knowledge that God did not want them to possess. But not the real God. That's the first lie that's been told to humanity. Is that right there, that lie. And when this lie happened, it happened at the same time as our languages were confounded. Yes, that's right. At one time we spoke to one another, we communicated, rather, without the need of written word, or even so much spoken word, because the angelos, or messengers between two gods, can become easily corrupted when you have to put them into an arcane or symbolic form. They can thus be manipulated, changed, or chiseled away by revisionists in the future. Therefore, the original word is nearly undefinable. As Einstein said, he had read all the books of the sciences and all the books of the religion by the time he was 12, and he didn't believe any of it. He carried on the rest of his life with this constant nagging unbelief or questioning. But Einstein was not an atheist. Einstein knew, through his power of intuition and sheer deduction of the reasoning and the majesty of the universe, that God is there. And in fact, the sheer propensity and infinite conception, our inability to even begin to conceive of the God, is evidence of it. However, in all of the world's religions, we hear of enlightenment and immortality, breaking through. Break on through to the other side. Yeah, come on. Yeah. That is the experience that the shamans have long been practicing for many thousands of years, but due to the patriarchal institution of patriarchy on the world, there has been a systematic repression of all our older matriarchal influenced religions. If you look back 15, 20, 25,000 years ago in archaeology, you'll find Vindo dolls or fertility dolls of the mother. And that is not a coincidence. She was pregnant with the muscaria, the virgin mother that gives birth. It's an allegory. The muscaria mushroom, and all mushrooms for a fact, they appear to magically come out of nowhere and thus disappear magically back into nothing. They don't have a seed. They're a truly hermaphroditic type of organism. In and of themselves, they contain both the vaginal and the phallic.